In 1958, a mechanic at a full-service Phillips 66 on the edge of Salina, Kansas, kept a worn brass tire gauge in his shirt pocket, and he pulled it out at every single fill-up on every single car, whether the driver asked him to or not. It cost him about $5, and it was the most valuable tool in the station. While the gas pumped, he walked the 4 tires, pressed the gauge to each valve, read it, and topped off whatever had gone low. His customers thought it was a courtesy. It was not. It was the reason their tires lasted twice as long as everyone else's, the reason their gas went further on the long, flat highway miles, and once, for a family headed west with a loaded trunk, it was the reason a tire did not let go at 70 miles an hour on a July afternoon. That is the trick. It costs $5 and takes 2 minutes, and almost nobody does it anymore. And there is a reason it disappeared that has nothing to do with it ceasing to work. The trick is nothing more than this: keeping the AIR in your tires at the pressure the carmaker specified, and checking it with a gauge often enough to catch the slow loss before it costs you. That is the entire thing. A tire is not a sealed vessel. It breathes. A healthy tire loses roughly 1 to 2 pounds of pressure every month just sitting there, more when the weather turns cold, and it does it so slowly that your eye will never catch it. A tire can be 10 pounds low and still look perfectly full to a man standing over it. The only way to know is to press a gauge to the valve, which is why a $5 gauge in a shirt pocket was worth more than any polish or additive on the shelf. The Salina mechanic knew that the enemy was not a flat. The enemy was the slow, invisible loss that no one ever measured. Here is the physics he understood in his hands, long before anyone put a number on it. A tire that is low does not roll. It drags. The soft sidewall flexes and folds with every rotation, and all that flexing turns into heat and into wasted effort, a force called rolling resistance that the engine has to overcome with fuel. An underinflated tire is like a bicycle with half-flat tires, where you pedal twice as hard to go the same distance. The engine on that car is doing the same thing, burning extra gasoline every mile just to shove 4 sagging tires down the road. Properly inflated, the tire rolls light and true, and the engine only has to move the car. That is the difference between a car that sips and a car that drinks, and the whole of it lives in a column of air you cannot see. Think about what that flexing actually costs. Every time a soft tire rolls under the weight of the car, the bottom of it squashes flat and then springs back, over and over, hundreds of times a minute, and every one of those flexes bleeds off a little energy as heat. That energy did not come from nowhere. It came out of the fuel tank, through the engine, through the drive line, and it was thrown away warming rubber and air instead of moving you down the road. A man could feel it if he paid attention. A car with soft tires feels heavy, sluggish, like it is climbing a slight grade that is not there, and the engine drones a little harder to hold its speed. The Salina mechanic could tell a low tire from the driver's seat before he ever reached for the gauge, because he had spent 20 years feeling the difference between a car the engine had to fight and a car it merely had to carry. The Department of Energy has since put hard numbers on what that Salina mechanic felt through the soles of his boots. Underinflated tires can lower your gas mileage by about 0.2% for every single pound they are low across all 4. Keep them at the right pressure, and you can improve your mileage by up to 3%, and in the worst cases, far more. That does not sound like much until you carry it across a year of driving and then across the country. The government estimates that underinflated tires waste around 5 million gallons of gasoline in this country every single day. That is not a typo. 5 million gallons a day burned for nothing because the air in millions of tires is low and no one is checking it with a $5 gauge. Bring it down to one driver and 1 year, and it stops being abstract. Take an ordinary car that covers 12,000 miles in a year and returns 25 miles to the gallon. That is a little under 500 gallons of gasoline a year going through the engine. Let the tires drift 8 or 10 pounds low, the way tires quietly do when no one checks them, and the mileage can fall by several percent, which is a couple of dozen gallons poured out for nothing over that year on the fuel bill alone. That is money you never see leave, because it leaves a few cents at a time, at every fill, forever. The engine burned it, the road ate it, and no one ever handed you a receipt that said this tank cost you more because your tires were soft. The Salina mechanic handed his customers that receipt, in a way, every time he topped off their tires and waved them back onto the highway lighter than they came in. But the gas was never the biggest number, and the mechanic knew it. The bigger money was in the rubber itself. A tire that runs low wears wrong. It rides on its outer edges instead of its full face. It runs hot, and it grinds itself away years before its time. Some tire makers will tell you that running just 5 pounds below the proper pressure can cut a tire's tread life by as much as a quarter. Keep them right, and the average driver gets an extra 5,000 to 7,000 miles out of a set before having to buy the next one. You can read the whole story in how a tire wears. A tire run chronically low wears its 2 outer edges while the center stays fat, because a soft tire bows in the middle and rides on its shoulders. A tire run too hard does the opposite, wearing a strip straight down the center while the edges stay deep. A tire kept right wears evenly across its whole face, which is exactly why it lasts. The Salina mechanic could pick up a worn tire, run his thumb across the tread, and tell you in a second whether it had spent its life low, high, or right, the way a doctor reads a symptom. He taught his regulars to do the same, to crouch down once in a while and look at where the rubber was going, because a tire wearing on its edges was a tire telling you, in the only language it had, that it was hungry for air. The wear is not gentle either, once a tire gets low. Studies since have found that a tire running just 10% below its proper pressure wears out roughly 15% faster, and the American Automobile Association has measured fuel economy falling by as much as 2% for every pound below the mark on some cars.
Before we go on, I made something special for you. A guide for men like us, who still believe a man should be able to keep his own car running. It's the Forgotten Mechanic's Handbook, the old-fashioned car repair secrets our grandfathers used to fix any engine and keep it running for decades. But these skills are disappearing fast, and once they're gone for good. Don't pay another mechanic ever again. Scan the QR code on screen or click the link below. Go ahead, I'll wait right here.
Put those two together, and you see the trap the neglectful driver walks into without ever feeling the step. The low tire costs him at the pump every mile, and it costs him at the tire store every year, and both bills arrive so gradually, so folded into the ordinary cost of owning a car, that he never once connects them to the little brass tool he does not own. He simply believes cars are expensive. The Salina mechanic believed cars were cheap to keep and expensive to neglect, and the whole difference between those two beliefs fit inside a tire gauge. A set of tires is one of the larger bills a car hands you, and a man who made his tires last a third longer on a $5 gauge and 2 minutes a month was quietly saving himself real money every year he owned the car. Add it together the way the mechanic did for his regulars, and the figure gets serious. The fuel wasted by soft tires runs somewhere between $100 and $500 a year for a typical driver, depending on the car and the miles. Stack the shortened tire life on top of that, the sets bought too soon, and then add the one thing that has no price until it happens: the breakdown or the blowout the low tire causes, and the tow, and the ruined trip. For a family running 2 cars hard, it is entirely possible for the neglect of a $5 gauge to cost them the better part of $600 in a year. Not as a promise, as a ceiling that a great many drivers quietly hit and never know they hit, because the loss comes a few dollars at a time and never sends a bill. Here is the part of the story we skipped, the part that explains why the Salina mechanic treated a pocket gauge like a sacred thing. He had not always been careful. He learned it from the man who ran the station before him, an old-timer who had seen the roads before they were paved and had buried the habit deep in the boy's hands. The old man made him check the pressure on every car for 2 years before he was allowed to touch an engine. And when the boy grumbled that it was beneath him, the old man told him about a tire, a family, a loaded car, a hot day, a tire that had been quietly losing air for a month until it was running 20 pounds low and building heat with every mile, until the rubber came apart on the highway and the car left the road. After that, the boy checked every tire without being asked for the rest of his life, because he understood the gauge was not about gas or even about money. It was about the heat you could not see building in a tire that no one had measured. There was a second lesson, quieter than the first, that the old man taught with his hands rather than his words. He never trusted his eyes on a tire, not once, not even on a tire that looked full and round and fine. He would say that the eye is a liar on a tire, that a tire 10 pounds low looks exactly like a tire at its proper pressure to any man standing over it, and that the whole reason the gauge existed was that the human eye simply cannot see the thing that matters. So he measured, always. He measured the tire that looked fine and the tire that looked low, with the same brass gauge and the same 2 seconds of attention, because the one time you trust your eyes and skip the measure is the one time the tire fools you. The Salina mechanic carried that into 30 years of his own, and never once in all that time looked at a tire and decided it did not need checking. That heat is the whole hidden danger, and it is worth understanding, because it is exactly what the numbers on a page cannot make you feel. A low tire flexes more, and flexing makes heat, and heat is what destroys a tire from the inside. The tread can begin to separate from the body of the tire, and when it lets go at speed, it does not go quietly. It comes apart, and on a heavy vehicle, it can pull the whole car sideways. This is not old folklore. In the late 1990s, a wave of exactly this kind of failure, tires coming apart on the highway, was linked to more than 100 deaths in this country, and it became one of the largest tire recalls in history. The cause was a tangle of tire design and low recommended pressures and heat, but underneath all of it sat the same simple fact the Salina mechanic knew in 1958. A tire that runs low runs hot, and a tire that runs hot can kill you. And here is where the trick quietly disappeared, and why it was never a conspiracy so much as a slow forgetting that suited everyone but the driver. In 1958, checking your tires was not something you had to remember, because a man in a uniform did it for you, free every time you bought gas. That was what full service meant. Then the stations went to self-service because self-service was cheaper, and the man with the brass gauge in his pocket vanished from the islands. Nobody replaced him. It is worth remembering what that man actually did, because it was more than pump gas. He checked your oil and topped it off. He put water in your radiator and your battery. He cleaned your windshield front and back and looked at your wiper blades while he was up there. And he checked your tires, all 4, with a gauge because that was simply part of the ritual of buying gasoline in America. A driver in 1958 did not have to remember to maintain these things because a trained man laid hands on the car every few hundred miles and caught the small trouble while it was still small. When self-service came, all of that quietly went away at once, and the whole burden of catching the slow, invisible losses passed silently from a professional with a gauge to a driver who did not own one and had never been taught to. We did not decide to stop maintaining our tires. We just stopped being handed the man who did it for us, and no one ever told us the job was now ours. And nobody in the business had any reason to. A tire shop does not lose money when your tires wear out early. A station does not lose money when your engine burns extra fuel. The only person with a stake in that $5 gauge was you, and you were the one person who stopped being handed it. The habit did not die because it stopped working. It died because the one man whose job had been to keep it alive was let go, and no one was ever paid to take his place. It faded so completely that the government finally had to step in, and this is the part that should stop you cold. After those highway deaths, Congress passed a law, the TREAD Act, and out of it came a federal rule. Beginning in the mid-2000s and required on every new car sold from September of 2007, every vehicle had to carry a tire pressure monitoring system, a set of sensors that watches the air in your tires and lights a warning on your dash. Think about what that means. The habit of checking your tires with a $5 gauge had vanished so thoroughly from American life that the government made car makers build the gauge into the dashboard of every single car because they could no longer trust a single driver to do it. The Salina mechanic did for free, out of his shirt pocket, what now requires 4 electronic sensors, a receiver, and a federal law to accomplish, and it still does not do it as well. And even with a light on the dash of nearly every car on the road, the problem did not go away. Surveys taken years after the sensors became mandatory still found huge numbers of cars rolling around underinflated because a warning light that only speaks up at the edge of danger leaves an enormous gray zone of cars that are merely low, quietly wasting fuel and rubber, with no light to tell them so. The sensor solved the blowout. It did nothing for the slow bleed, which was always where most of the money went. A law and 100 million sensors could mandate the safety floor, but they could not give back the habit, and the habit was the part that saved you money every single month. Because that warning light, useful as it is not the habit. Here is the honest limit of it. The thing the mechanic would have wanted you to know. By federal rule, that dashboard light is only required to warn you when a tire is 25% or more below its proper pressure. 25%. On a tire that should hold 32 pounds, that light may not come on until the tire is down around 24. And by then, you have already spent months burning extra fuel and grinding the tread off the edges of that tire. The warning light is a last line of defense against a blowout. It was never meant to save your gas or your rubber, and it does not. The $5 gauge, used once a month, catches the loss when it is 2 or 3 pounds, long before the light would ever glow. The sensor tells you when you are in danger. The gauge tells you when you are merely losing money, which is almost always. There are a few honest things to know to do the trick right, the same things the Salina mechanic told every customer who asked. Check the pressure when the tires are cold, first thing in the morning before you have driven on them, because driving heats the air and gives you a false high reading. Use the pressure listed on the sticker in the driver's door jamb or in the owner's manual, never the number stamped on the side of the tire, because that sidewall number is the tire's maximum, not the pressure your car was designed for. And do not overdo it the other way. Overinflating past the recommended pressure does not save you more gas worth having, and it makes the ride harsh and the handling nervous and wears the center of the tread. The whole trick is precision, not force. The right number, checked often, held steady. That is all it ever was. A few more honest details, the kind the mechanic passed across the counter with his own hands. Cold weather pulls pressure down hard, roughly a pound for every 10 degrees the temperature drops, which is why tires that were fine in September are low in December, and every dashboard light in the parking lot glows on the first hard freeze. That is not a malfunction, that is physics, and the answer is simply to add the air the cold took out. Check the spare, too, if you can reach it, because a spare that has quietly gone flat in the trunk is no spare at all, and the sensors do not watch it. Keep the little caps on the valves, because they keep grit out of the seal, and a plain gauge in your own two hands, pressed to a cold valve in your own driveway, will always tell you more than a light that waits for danger. None of it is hard. It is a tool, a number, and the discipline to use them before anything has gone wrong. One honest word about the things the modern shop will try to sell you around this simple habit, because the mechanic would have wanted it said plainly. You will be offered nitrogen for your tires instead of plain air, sometimes for a fee. Nitrogen leaks a little slower and is steadier with temperature, and it is genuinely used in racing and aviation. But for an ordinary car driven by an ordinary person, plain air checked regularly does the same job for nothing, and nitrogen is no substitute for ever picking up a gauge. The gauge itself need not be fancy. A simple pencil gauge for a couple of dollars reads true if you use it right, and a dial or a digital one for a little more is easier to read. And any of them, used once a month, will save you more than the most expensive tire on the shelf. What matters was never the tool's price. It was whether the tool was in your hand at all. If any of this makes you want to go out to your own car with a gauge tonight, that is the point, and it costs almost nothing to start. Hit that subscribe button, and then go find out what your tires are actually holding, because you will very likely be surprised. None of this was ever complicated. It was a column of air and a brass gauge and 2 minutes a month, and it saved a man his tires, his gas, and once in a while his life. The Salina mechanic understood that the most expensive failures on a car are the slow, invisible ones. The losses that never announce themselves, that come $1 and a degree at a time until the day they come all at once. He met that slow loss the only way it can be met, by measuring it on every car, at every fill, with a tool that cost less than a tank of gas. We did not lose the trick because someone clever took it from us. We lost it because the man who did it for us was sent home, and we never picked up the gauge ourselves. It still sits on the shelf at any parts store, $5, the same simple tool it always was, still the surest way to save the gas and the rubber and the one bad afternoon that no sensor will catch in time. The car will warn you now when you are already in trouble. It will never do what he did, which was to catch the trouble a month before it started. The old man in the Salina station kept his brass gauge until the day he handed the station over, and on that day he took it out of his shirt pocket, pressed it into the hand of the man taking his place, and told him what the man before him had said. Every tire, every car, every time. It is $5 and 2 minutes, and it is the difference between a slow loss no one sees and a fast one no one survives. Then he walked out to the island one last time and pumped a tank of gas and checked all 4 without being asked.